1000. Robert Jenrick is here. We're going to be speaking to him, the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's live in Manchester at the Tory party conference. Just before we do that, let's have a quick look at what he had to say about these university protests.
There are protests being scheduled in universities for October the 7th. I think that's a disgrace, frankly. That's an absolute disgrace.
Robert Jenrick, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I think a lot of people, certainly listening to me this morning and watching me, would agree with what you just said there. People are saying enough is enough. You know, it's all very well to have protests and free speech and all the rest of it, but this has turned into a sort of hate fest now, and these are people who openly want the destruction of Israel. It's not about Palestine anymore. It's about hating Jewish people, whether they're in Israel or whether they're here.
No, absolutely right. My message to anyone thinking about going on these protests today is show some common decency and stay at home. Look, just do the decent thing for once in your life. These are hate marches. Let's be honest with ourselves. These are disgusting people who are going out on October the 7th of all days. And for the police, if anybody is lionising prescribed terrorist organisations like Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestine Action, come down on these people like a ton of bricks. Arrest them, make sure they feel the full force of the law.
Yeah, absolutely right. And of course, one of the things that I say very often, Robert, is that, you know, when I grew up in the 70s, and there were many things that happened in the Middle East that were, you know, certainly disturbing. You know, there was the Black September movement. There was Israel having wars constantly with Lebanon. You know, there was a Six-Day War. There was the Golan Heights situation. You know, there was always something going on. But you didn't see this kind of outpouring of either support or anger about any of it. And I maintain that an awful lot of it goes on now because a lot of those people are living in this country, and they've come to this country from those countries in the Middle East who hate Israel.
Well, there does seem to be an obsession with Israel amongst some people, a very small minority of people in our country and in our media right now. Of course we all want to see peace in the Middle East and this appalling conflict brought to an end and get those hostages home to their loved ones in Israel. But why some people bring this onto the streets of our country and also intimidate British Jews is beyond me. No one who lives in this country should be being made to feel bad or to be fearful because of something that's happening thousands of miles away. That's completely wrong and a total disgrace. So look, anyone who's thinking about going out on one of these protests, just don't do it. Show some decency. This is frankly anti-British.
Yeah. That's a sentiment echoed by Keir Starmer, but should the government not be doing more? I mean, are you squeamish about clamping down on free speech? Is that why you're not calling for these things to be banned?
Well, I want the police to be as robust as possible. Of course you could go out and protest. I might agree or disagree with someone doing that, but you've got a right to do that. But you have not got a right to lionise terrorist groups, to broadcast anti-Semitic chants onto Big Ben, to hold up banners saying globalise the Intifada, which is clearly inciting violence, to shout jihad on the streets of our cities. Absolutely not. And anyone who is doing those things must be arrested. And then when they come before the courts, they should be subjected to the full force of the law, not these pathetic punishments that we've seen. Remember those people who wore T-shirts with paragliders on them, kind of celebrating or laughing at the fact that Hamas terrorists had gone into the music festival and they were let off with a slap on the wrist. That was a disgrace, and the magistrates involved in that should be ashamed of themselves. We've got to be very, very tough, a zero-tolerance attitude to extremism of any kind.
But this is the problem because, you know, there's a case today that we've looked at on the show already, and I know we're going to talk about judges in a moment. Case today of 3 men who were arrested for committing disorder outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. All 3 of them sentenced yesterday by a Crown Court judge to longer in prison than the man that they were protesting against, who of course was an Ethiopian by the name of Kibatu, who was jailed for less time, Hadush Kibatu, for less time for attempted sexual assault and sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, It doesn't look. These are examples of the growing sense of two-tier justice in this country, where people can be sent to prison for a sentence of 31 months for a reprehensible tweet, but then a bloke in Hull who's got 100,000 child sexual abuse images on his laptop is told by a judge that he deserves a second chance. Do you remember that guy outside the Turkish consulate the other day who grabbed a knife, charged out onto the street and started slashing a man who was burning a Quran on the street, and he spat on him and kicked him, and he was let off without even going to jail? I mean, something is going badly wrong in our criminal justice system where we're seeing these things happening. We've got to change this. We want consistency so that people can have absolute respect about the independence of our judiciary and the way that you're going to get treated equally under the law.
And Robert, you've somehow compiled a list of more than 30 sitting full-time and part-time judges who have previously volunteered help or provided free legal services for open border organisations, which would suggest that these people are likely to be more friendly, shall we say, and more likely to be more forgiving of criminal suspects who come before them who might be migrants.
Yeah, look, we've done our research and we've found at least 30 sitting judges, mostly in the immigration tribunals and courts, who have links to open borders charities, who have been taking to social media in some cases to broadcast their open borders left-wing views about immigration. And the public will rightly ask themselves when they see this, how independent are these people? And are they bringing their views to their role on the bench as judges? And is there a connection between these views that they have and these absurd judgments that we're seeing? Remember that Albanian criminal who avoided deportation at one stage because his son apparently didn't like the taste of chicken nuggets in Albania? I mean, these are mind-boggling judgments. And is it because these judges just really aren't independent and they're just open borders activists who are bringing their views to the judiciary? If you want to go into politics, stand for Parliament. If you want to be a judge, be independent. That's my message. So we're going to change the law, change the way in which judges are appointed if we're lucky enough to be in power in the future, so that we never get into this situation again, and we weed out these activists and restore public trust in our judiciary. Because by and large, it's the most respected and revered in the world, but a small number of very bad apples are letting everyone else down.
They're always very fiercely defensive, though, aren't they, the legal fraternity, of any interference from politicians? I mean, you talk about setting up some kind of judicial register of interest and possibly doing away with the sentencing council. How would you be able to do that? Would you be able to do it?
Well, most of this is the world as it was before Tony Blair came along and vandalised our constitution and set up all of these left-wing quangos that now seem to dominate public life in this country. Enough is enough. Let's scrap all of those and let's return power to ministers and Parliament, who are ultimately accountable to you, the people of this country. That's what I want to see. And if you look at the Sentencing Council, this is this quango set up by Gordon Brown that you might remember earlier in the year, brought forward guidelines that would have meant there's a different route through our criminal justice system depending on the colour of your skin or your faith, or even absolutely insane ideas like intergenerational trauma, whatever that means. No. What we want to have is equality before the law. You or I, anyone in this country, treated exactly the same before our criminal justice system.
And so, I mean, that would be something you would do as a Justice Minister, possibly, of the Conservative Party, if the Conservative Party gets back into government. You're up at Manchester conference at the moment. I've spoken to a few people up there in the last couple of days. They say that the mood is not particularly optimistic. It's not very well attended. There's not much money there. Sponsors have kind of pulled out. Is it a pretty miserable place to be at the moment?
No, I've been having a good time here. Lots of activists here. We've been having good debates. Kemi did a good speech on Sunday when she said we're going to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Great step. We need to get on and do that, don't we, so we can secure our borders. Look, the truth, though, is, you are right to say, the Tory party needs to change a lot more. We suffered our worst ever election defeat just over a year ago. Why? Because we let people down. on some of the biggest issues facing our country: immigration, the fact that taxes were too high, public services weren't as good as they should have been. So we've got to make the public believe that we've genuinely internalised those mistakes, we've learnt our lessons, and we are going to be a different Conservative Party. Have we changed enough? No. We've got to really work hard to regain the trust of the British people. I get that. The party, I think, is getting that, and we've got to make sure that we take that message forward from this party conference onwards.
There seems to be quite a bit of disquiet, though, around the leadership, doesn't there? I mean, I'm told that Kemi Badenoch was heckled yesterday when she was at the 1922 party by some people who are not that keen on what she's doing.
Well, I thought Kemi did a very good speech, actually, on Sunday. She said we're going to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Very robust message on immigration. That's absolutely right. You know, I've been advocating that for a long time now. And she's our leader. We're going to get behind her. I'm doing a speech today. She's doing her big leader speech tomorrow. Hope it's going to be a great success.
Yeah. We were hoping to speak to her about it, actually, but apparently her people say that she's not going to speak to us. So you can give her our best and say that, you know, maybe they haven't told her that, because we always thought she was quite friendly to us, but there's another story. What about the situation regarding this leaked recording which has come out today? I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm sure you don't think there's anything wrong with it, but have a listen to this.
In Birmingham the other day to do a video on litter, and it was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country. But the other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives. That's not the right way we want to live as a country.
And I think a lot of people would sympathise with what you just said there. We were speaking to a Muslim lady the other day who said that she absolutely accepts that there are Muslim ghettos in this country.
Yeah, well, I don't resile from those comments at all, and obviously it was The Guardian who stuck them out there.
Of course.
We want to live in a country which is well integrated, where people are living side by side. We don't want segregated pockets of our towns and cities. We don't want ghettos in this country. I want my kids to be growing up alongside their fellow Brits of all skin colours and faiths. And I'm afraid that hasn't happened in recent years. This is a problem that's got worse in my lifetime, not better. In the last 20 years, there have been at least 6 major reports into the integration failures of our country, including by very, very prominent people like Baroness Louise Casey. People don't do anything about it. And then you've got these left-wing politicians, the Labour Party today, journalists like at The Guardian, coming down on people and trying to shut down the debate, labelling them as racist, the same old story, trying to stop people talking about this issue. And I'm afraid at the extremes, this takes the country down a very dark path. Here in Manchester, just last week, you saw a man who'd lived in this country for 30 years, clearly was not integrated, did not share British values, go to a local mosque and kill British Jews. That is where a failure of integration goes in the end. So we've got to have this debate. I'm not backing down. I'm not going to be cowed. That's not my way. I'm going to make sure we keep talking about this. And most importantly, we actually try and drive some positive action to build a sense of national togetherness and unity, which is what I think most people in this country want, regardless of their faith or skin colour.
I think that's true. I think an awful lot of people are beginning to see why that is the case as well now. Just one final question. I spoke to Mel Stride yesterday because he wasn't on the cover of the brochure for the Conservative Party conference, and you weren't either. He said he was in America. What was your excuse?
I'm not sure why I wasn't there, but I think I was off doing something around the country, so I don't think any slight was intended, but next time.
No skullduggery, very good.
Maybe I wasn't photogenic enough.
Very possibly so. Robert, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Robert Jenrick MP, Shadow Justice Secretary, there saying an awful lot of very reasonable things.